Every night in our mansion, the ritual begins. I am forced to wear the yellowed lace of a bride while feeding an empty chair as if my husband were alive. My son Brandon watches me with greedy eyes, his breath thick with brandy. Papa is dead, Mother. Now I'm the one in charge, he whispers, tightening my dress until I gasp. He has declared me incompetent to seize my $2 million trust. He thinks I'm a broken old woman, but he's wrong. Listen to the end to hear how I reclaimed my life, and subscribe for more of my journey. The yellowed lace of my 30-year-old wedding dress feels like cold, dead skin against my neck. Not silk. Not fabric. Skin. Dead and papery and intimate in the worst possible way, the way only a shroud can be intimate, pressed against the pulse of a woman who hasn't yet stopped breathing. I stare into the vanity mirror, the same mirror in which I once pinned gardenias into my hair before Arthur and I danced until the hired band packed up their instruments and went home, and I watched Brandon's knuckles work the corset strings from behind. That small, expensive-looking scar on his right hand. I remember the night he got it. He told us he'd fallen off a horse. I had known even then, at his age, that he was lying. I had known and I had said nothing, and here is what my silence has cost me. He wrenches the laces tighter. The air leaves my lungs in a thin, pathetic whistle, the kind of sound a punctured tire makes on a cold Connecticut morning. My chest compresses. My ribs bow inward under the boning of this Victorian relic. Hold still, Mother. His voice is a silk ribbon wrapped around a razor. Not loud. Never loud when we are alone. The performance of gentleness is so much more effective than shouting. He isn't dressing me. He is binding me. I press my palm flat against the edge of the vanity table and hold my own gaze in the glass. Steel gray eyes, still sharp, still watching, even as my face registers the obedient blankness of a woman who has given up. 65 years old. A master of clinical psychology from Tufts. 30 years of sitting across from broken people and coaxing their minds back from the edge. And here I am, being packaged like a porcelain doll, like a body laid out for a viewing. He ties off the strings. The knot is neat. Sailor's tight. He steps back and admires his work in the mirror with that shark smile, all teeth, no warmth, the smile of a man who has won something he was never entitled to. My reflection stares back at both of us, a ghost in yellowed lace. Everything has its proper place, I think. And your place, Brandon, is somewhere I have not yet decided. He parades me down the hallway, his hand a heavy anchor on my shoulder, steering me the way you steer livestock. The Walker estate at dusk is a study in contrasts I find myself cataloging out of pure clinical habit. Priceless oil portraits in gilded frames above new motion sensors with their small, red, unblinking eyes, Aubusson carpets beneath smart home panels that glow pale blue in the dimness, old money and new surveillance married in an arrangement neither of them chose. The dining room receives us like a church. The mahogany table runs the full length of the room, a dark lake catching the flickering light from the seven-armed candelabra. I have eaten at this table for nearly 30 years. I have hosted surgeons and senators at this table. I have watched Arthur carve the Thanksgiving turkey here, laughing with his whole chest, the sound so large it rattled the crystal. That man is in the ground now. The chair at the head of the table is empty. My task is the same as it has been every night for the past 11 weeks. I move along the left side of the table with a measured, silent gait, the walk I have cultivated under duress, neither shuffling nor hurrying, because either extreme would give Brandon information. The Victorian lace drags behind me like a heavy tail, like the train of a dress in a procession no one else can see. I reach the head of the table. I lay the heavy silver fork. The knife. The linen napkin, folded into the precise rectangle Arthur always preferred, because Arthur had his preferences and I had honored them, and now Brandon has weaponized my memory of them against me. I set a place for a dead man. The scent of lavender sachets from the dress mingles with the suffocating smell of Brandon's hair pomade, expensive, synthetic, a young man's vanity worn like armor. Underneath both of those, underneath everything in this house, is a smell I have identified but have not yet catalogued. Something chemical. Something faintly wrong. I tuck it away. Everything has its proper place. Including evidence. Time for Papa to eat, Brandon says. He pulls out the velvet-backed chair with a theatrical flourish, not for me, but for the absence of my husband, and slides a bowl of chilled consommé toward the empty space with all the gravity of a sommelier presenting a Chateau Petrus. He watches me with those dark, predatory eyes. Brown, the color of deep water over a cold bottom. I pick up the George III silver spoon. The one Arthur brought back from an estate sale in Bath the year Brandon turned 12. My fingers close around the handle and immediately betray me, a fine tremor working through my knuckles, radiating up my forearm. Not entirely the baclofen's fault. Some of it is pure, distilled rage that I have nowhere to put. I lift the spoon to the air. I hold a mouthful of cold consommé over the empty seat. The liquid trembles in the curve of the silver. I keep my face blank, my eyes performing a vacant softness I do not feel. Then I drop it. The spoon clatters against the porcelain rim of the bowl with a sound like a gunshot in a cathedral. The consommé sloshes. A dark splash lands on the white damask. Brandon's shark smile doesn't falter. Not the smile itself. But his eyes do the thing they do when the calculation behind them recalibrates, a fractional narrowing, a predator tracking a deviation in the herd's behavior. He watches the stain spread on the tablecloth with the focused attention of a man who keeps notes. He is always keeping notes. I know this now. I did not know it soon enough. I stare at the empty chair. I smooth my skirts. I let my face do nothing. He leans in close. The brandy arrives before he does, a warm, humid cloud of single malt and something darker underneath, the smell of a man who has been celebrating in advance. His face is so close to mine that I can see the individual pores in his tanned skin, the precise edge of his side part where the hair product has hardened into a helmet. He doesn't pull away. He invades. He occupies the space between us the way an army occupies territory, making it hostile simply by being present in it. Papa is dead, Mother. A whisper. Silk over a razor's edge. Now, I am your only man. The words land like a boot on a ribcage. A claim of ownership. A flag planted on the ruins of everything I have built and earned and survived. He is 38 years old and he is telling me the terms of my existence as if he invented the concept of authority. His hand reaches up with a terrible tenderness. His fingers find a strand of salt and pepper hair that has escaped my bun and he tucks it back, smoothing it into place. The gesture is almost loving. That is the horror of it, it looks like love. It is the same gesture Arthur used to make, and Brandon knows that, and he is using it like a scalpel. The Audemars Piguet on his wrist catches the candlelight as he withdraws his hand, a gold gleam, a reminder of the fortune he has already begun bleeding from its veins. I remain a fortress. I have spent 4 decades studying the architecture of the human mind. I know precisely what he is doing. I know the clinical term for it. I know the 7 stages of this particular methodology, and I know which stage we are currently in, and I know what comes next if I do not alter the geometry of this situation. I do not scream. I do not flinch. I let him believe the fortress is empty. He moves to the sideboard with the loose-limbed confidence of a man who has never genuinely feared consequences. He lifts the crystal decanter, Waterford, a wedding gift, 30 years old, heavy as a weapon, and pours himself another finger of brandy. He doesn't offer me any. He stopped doing that 8 weeks ago, around the same time the baclofen started appearing in my evening tea. We need to get the pacing right for the service, he says, in the tone of a man discussing a board agenda. Casual. Managerial. As if the word service requires no clarification between a mother and son dining alone in a locked house. The way you sit, the way you don't speak. He tilts the glass, watches the amber liquid tilt back. It's perfect for the viewing. The ice water that fills my chest is not metaphorical. I feel it as a physiological event, a vascular constriction that travels from my sternum outward into my fingers, a cold wave of pure cognitive recognition. He is not gaslighting me into a conservatorship. He is staging my death. The nightly dress. The empty chair. The ritual feeding of a ghost. This is not psychological torture for its own sake. This is rehearsal. He is training me into a performance, polishing my grief into something photogenic, something that will look coherent and pitiable and finished to the right witnesses at the right moment. He has a timeline. He has a venue. He is standing in my dining room discussing the blocking of my funeral as though I am already a prop and not the woman whose name is still on every document that matters. I stare at the empty chair. Arthur. I'm sorry I didn't see this sooner. Sterling will wonder why I haven't called, I say. My voice is a dry rasp, the voice of a woman who hasn't spoken much today, because she has not been permitted to speak much. But I make it land. I let the name of the estate attorney settle onto the dinner table like a stone dropped into still water. Brandon's left eyelid twitches. A sharp, involuntary spasm, there and gone in a quarter second, but I am a clinician and I have been watching him for 38 years and I catalog it with the precision of a woman who understands exactly what involuntary microexpressions mean. Then he laughs. Loud, performative, the sound ricocheting off the high Gothic ceilings like a ball bearing in a tin box. Sterling thinks you're in a private memory care facility in Vermont, mother. He reaches into the pocket of his cashmere sweater with the theatrical ease of a man producing a trump card he's been holding all evening. A folded document. Even in the dim light, even at this distance, I can read the letterhead. APS. Adult Protective Services. I've handled the paperwork. You're incompetent. He unfolds the document and lays it flat on the table beside my plate, smoothing it with his palm the way you smooth a contract. A ward of the state. Or rather, the shark smile, a ward of me. I look at the document. I do not touch it. I read what I can read from where I sit, and I file every word into the part of my mind where I keep the things that will matter later. The legal walls, I calculate, are approximately 10 feet thick. But walls have foundations. And foundations can be undermined. Something crystallizes in my chest, a sharp, hot point of it, brief and bright as a struck match, and before the clinical part of my brain can intervene, my body is already moving. My palms press flat on the table, and I push back, chair legs scraping against the hardwood floor, my wiry strength surprising even me as I begin to rise. The corset catches. The boning digs into the space beneath my ribs with a precision that suggests architecture, and the sheer volume of Victorian lace catches under the chair leg, and the combination of these two physical realities produces a stumble that translates to the outside observer as exactly the kind of uncoordinated flailing that confirms every lie Brandon has told about my condition. I hate my body in that moment for its cooperation with his narrative. I have taken perhaps 2 steps toward the hallway. Then his hand comes down. It lands on my shoulder the way a trap closes, sudden, final, with a pressure that says this is not a request. He doesn't shout. He doesn't need to. The mask of the doting, burdened son drops the way a stage flat drops when the performance is over and no one is left in the audience. What's underneath it is not rage. Rage would almost be preferable, because rage is loud and loud leaves witnesses. What's underneath is something colder and more certain than rage. Sit. Down. 2 words. A period after each one. The friction of the lace burns against the thin skin of my neck as he guides me back into the chair. I feel the heat of his anger as a physical phenomenon. It radiates from his palm through my shoulder into my clavicle. I sit. I let him believe this is submission. I keep my face blank and my spine straight, because impeccable posture is the last sovereignty available to me in this room, and I will not surrender it. I am a prisoner in a museum of my own life. The curator is a madman. But the curator has not read everything in the collection. He looms over me, his face too close, his dark eyes doing that unblinking thing that less trained observers find merely intimidating. I find it diagnostic. Narcissistic stare. Dominance display. His Audemars Piguet catches the light as he braces his knuckles on the table. The secondary ledger, Martha. His voice drops to the register he reserves for moments when he believes he is being maximally intimidating. The one Arthur kept in the offshore accounts. Where is it? The gold signet ring on his finger catches my eye. Heavy. Dull. He started wearing it 3 weeks after Arthur died, started wearing it before the estate was legally settled, before the will was probated, before any of the paperwork that would have entitled him to so much as a cufflink from this house. He put it on because he had already decided everything was his. The legalities were just a formality he was managing. Everything has its proper place, Brandon, I say. It is not a non-answer. It is a complete and precise answer, and he is not intelligent enough in this moment to decode it. My catchphrase is a shield, yes, but it is also a message. Everything has its proper place. Including the secondary ledger. Including the evidence. Including, eventually, him. He reads it as obstinacy. As senile repetition. His jaw tightens. He needs that ledger. As long as he needs it, he needs me breathing. That calculation has been my only working capital for 11 weeks, and I have been spending it very carefully. I see it then, the flash behind his eyes. The shark going still in the water just before it accelerates. His right hand shifts almost imperceptibly toward me, and in that fractional movement I read everything I need to read, the weight of intent, the assessment of consequence, and the conclusion that there are currently no witnesses. I move faster than he expects. Not physically. Never physically. I am 65 years old and I have been on baclofen for 8 weeks and my body is not my most reliable instrument at the moment. I move strategically. My shoulders drop. My head tilts approximately 15 degrees to the right. My gaze unfocuses, pulling inward, going soft and distant, finding the middle space between his face and the candelabra. My lips part slightly. A small, tuneless hum escapes my throat, low, meandering, the auditory signature of a mind that has drifted loose of its moorings. I look at the empty chair as if I can see Arthur there. Brandon goes still. Then I feel the tension in his hand relax, the grip that had been gathering potential energy releasing it. He pulls back. He straightens. He makes a sound at the back of his throat, something between contempt and satisfaction, and he moves away from me toward the sideboard. He loves this. He needs it. The visual confirmation of my deterioration is the one addiction he has that isn't liquid. He is as dependent on the sight of my descent as he is on that Waterford decanter, and I have just given him his evening dose. I have spent 40 years as a clinical therapist, sitting with people who needed to believe they were in control of the room. I know every note of this performance. I can conduct it in my sleep. From beneath my lowered eyelids, I watch him. 8:14 p.m. I know this because I hear the clock on the mantel complete its quarter-hour chime at the exact moment he checks his Audemars Piguet, checks it and then, as if remembering himself, raises the brandy glass and takes a long, slow sip. His throat moves. Once, twice, 3 times. The particular rhythm of a man who has made a ritual out of a habit. 12 minutes from now he will do it again. I have been watching him for 11 weeks. I know his patterns better than I know my own pulse, better, frankly, since the baclofen has been interfering with mine. He checks the watch on the hour and the quarter hour. He pours on the hour. He moves to the window at 1:30 to look at the gate, a territorial survey, a king checking his walls. He does these things without knowing he does them, which is the most useful category of behavior. In my mind, I open the leather-bound medical reference I keep on the shelf in the study. I flip to the relevant sections. I have always had a facility for pharmacology, an interest developed alongside my clinical practice, a working knowledge of the substances my patients brought to me or were prescribed. Baclofen. Half-life approximately 5.6 hours. Sedative interaction profile with CNS depressants, including but not limited to alcohol. Including ethanol. Including, for example, a nightly intake of high-end brandy, consumed on a meticulous schedule by a predictable man who believes himself to be the only one watching. A narcissist's greatest weakness is his certainty that he is the only one watching. He thinks I'm a broken clock. He doesn't know I'm a stopwatch. He finishes the brandy. He sets the crystal down with the careful precision of a man who has had precisely enough to feel invulnerable. Then he pulls his phone from the pocket of his tailored trousers with the flourish of a stage magician producing the final trick. One tap on the screen. The smart home system responds with a chirp, cheerful, domestic, obscene in its normalcy. And then the sounds begin in sequence, the heavy thud of the iron bolts sliding home on the front doors, a sound like a coffin latch magnified, the mechanical whir of the motorized shutters sealing the tall Georgian windows one by one, the light from the outside world narrowing and then vanishing, the high, thin beep of the motion sensors arming themselves around the perimeter, their invisible tripwires strung across every threshold. Night mode. No one gets in, he says, and he says it with the satisfaction of a man who considers this generosity, and certainly, no one gets out. The estate sits behind iron gates that respond only to his thumbprint. The nearest neighbor is 10 miles of manicured Connecticut darkness away. The nearest legal office, the nearest APS satellite, the nearest anything that might constitute help, 10 miles, behind those gates, with Brandon Walker's thumbprint standing between me and all of it. The room is silent except for the candles and the clock. He looks at me one more time, a surveyor's look, assessing the property, and then he turns and walks out of the room, his heavy, arrogant footsteps receding down the hallway until I hear the study door close. The candles burn down. The clock ticks. I sit in the silence, this particular silence that has become, over 11 weeks, as familiar to me as my own breathing, and I breathe. Or rather, I try to breathe, the corset still compressing my lower ribs, the lace still riding the friction burns on my neck. The burns are new this week. A line of raw pink skin where the high Victorian collar has been rubbing against the same spot every night. I reach up and touch them. The pain is specific and clean and grounding, like pressing a thumb into a bruise to locate yourself in your body. I am still here. The pain confirms it. I am still Martha Walker, 65 years old, steel gray eyes, salt and pepper hair, master of clinical psychology, retired therapist, widow. Not senile. Not incompetent. Not a ward of anything. He thinks he has written the script for my ending. He has forgotten, or perhaps he never knew, which is its own kind of error, who taught him how to speak. Who sat across from him at this same table year after year and watched the cruelty coalesce behind those dark eyes and told herself it was a phase, told herself she could correct it, told herself that love and structure and the right therapeutic approach would eventually reach whatever was human inside him. I know every technique he is using because I taught him the vocabulary that underlies them, absorbed through proximity, through watching me work. He is a gifted student of manipulation who learned at the knee of someone who spent her career dismantling exactly this kind of architecture. My mistake was in never applying my clinical eye to my own household. I will not make that mistake again. I sit very still in the yellow candlelight, in my dead woman's dress, and I let the full weight of what I know settle into an arrangement in my mind, the way you arrange pieces on a chessboard, patient and unhurried, checking every angle before you move. He has the legal documents. He has the smart home system. He has the APS caseworkers. He has Brandon Walker, 40 years old and Ivy League educated and absolutely convinced of his own invulnerability. I have 40 years of clinical practice. I have pharmaceutical knowledge that would make his journal look like a grocery list. And I have time, not unlimited time. I am under no illusions about that, but enough. Enough to be patient. Enough to become, for him, exactly what he needs me to be, until the moment I decide to stop. I reach up one more time and touch the lace where it meets my neck. The burn is warm. It is present. I am present. I am the judge now. The morning light comes through the east-facing windows of the breakfast room the way it always has, indifferent, abundant, merciless, and strikes the Waterford crystal set with a force that feels personal. I squint against it. The baclofen from last night's tea has not entirely cleared my system. The world still has a slight smear at its edges, like a watercolor painting left in the rain. Brandon is already dressed. Cashmere and heather gray, tailored trousers with a knife-edge crease, leather loafers that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. He moves around the breakfast room with the proprietary ease of a man who has been rehearsing ownership for years and has finally stepped into the role. The silver tray. The Meissen cups. The Earl Grey he has already poured, steam rising from the rim in a thin, pale column. He slides the cup toward me across the table. I watch, because I am always watching, even when I appear not to be, and I see it. A single undissolved grain of white powder swirling near the rim in a small, lazy orbit before the heat takes it down. One grain. The rest has already dissolved. He is getting better at this, or he believes I am past noticing. I pick up the cup. There is a calculation that happens in the space between lifting the cup and bringing it to my lips, a rapid clinical triage. The baclofen is muscle relaxant grade. The dosage is calibrated to produce manageable sedation rather than unconsciousness because he needs me mobile enough to perform for the APS caseworker who is scheduled for this morning. I know she is scheduled because I heard him on his phone last night through the study wall. Just 3 words through 2 inches of plaster, but 3 words were enough. 11, Wednesday, confirmed. Defiance now means forced sedation later. Forced sedation means incoherence. Incoherence means I cannot observe, and observation is currently my only instrument. I drink the tea. Brandon watches me with the clinical interest of a man running a trial, noting the temperature, checking the administration, waiting for the onset curve. His shark smile sits on his face, reflected in the silver tray, doubled and inverted. Within 20 minutes, as reliably as a sunrise, the world begins to fray at the edges. My tongue becomes a thick, wet wool blanket. My legs become pillars of something heavier than muscle, lead, marble, the particular weight of a body that has been chemically instructed to stop cooperating. I breathe through it. I maintain my upright posture at the cost of real effort, spine rigid, hands folded on the table, because the moment my shoulders curve, the moment my head drops, I have handed him a visual that he will find a way to use. He watches the exact moment my eyelids begin to heavy. He checks his watch. He makes a small, satisfied sound at the back of his throat, the sound of a man whose experiment is proceeding according to protocol. The doorbell chimes at 11 minutes past 11, a bright, artificial sound that ricochets through the smart home speakers in every room simultaneously, the domestic cheerfulness of it grotesque against everything that lives inside these walls. Brandon transforms. I have watched actors on stage at the Long Wharf Theatre in New Haven who were less technically accomplished. The shift happens in less than 2 seconds, his shoulders drop from their predatory set into a rounded, burdened slump, his jaw softens, his dark eyes produce, I do not know how, physiologically, he manages it, but he manages it, a shimmer of something that reads as exhaustion and grief. He is the doting, beleaguered son before the door is fully open. The APS caseworker is a woman perhaps 45, thin-faced, wearing a wool blazer with a pen already clipped to the breast pocket. She smells of peppermint, the concentrated, pharmaceutical kind from the lozenges people use to stay alert during a long workday, and underneath it, the particular scent of overworked exhaustion, the cortisol-saturated musk of a social services professional carrying 3 times the caseload her salary justifies. Her name is Sarah. She's had a difficult night, Brandon sighs, ushering her into the drawing room. The sigh is engineered to carry the exact weight of long-suffering love, not complaint, which would suggest resentment, but endurance, which suggests devotion. He places his hand on my trembling arm as he guides me to the settee. To Sarah, it looks like support. To the nerve endings in my forearm, it is a vice grip, his fingers pressing into the muscle with a pressure that communicates, without words, the parameters of what I am and am not permitted to do in the next 60 minutes. He begins painting. He is a master forger, and the canvas he works on is Sarah's professional perception. Sundowning. The word drops into the conversation with the ease of long use. He has said it many times before today, to other people, and it has done its work each time. Episodes. Confabulation. Wandering. He uses the clinical vocabulary with the fluency of a man who has done his research, and the effect is precisely calibrated. Too much jargon reads as performance, but just enough reads as a loving family member who has educated himself for the sake of a parent in decline. He hits the register exactly right. I watch Sarah's face. I see the professional assessment overlay the personal response, the nodding, the note-taking, the careful neutrality, and underneath all of it I see what she actually feels, because I have sat across from enough social workers to read them in my sleep. She feels sorry for him. The burdened son. The attractive, exhausted man in the expensive sweater who has sacrificed his life to care for a mother who doesn't recognize him half the time. I feel the hot coal of a scream behind my sternum. I keep it there. I am fine. The sentence forms in my mind with perfect clarity and precision, a clinical refutation, composed of 3 words that carry, together, the full weight of my education and my sanity and my 40 years of sitting across from people who were genuinely unwell and knowing the difference. 3 words. I have spoken them 10,000 times with authority. They exit my lips as a wet, drunken mumble. The baclofen has gotten into the machinery of my speech. The coordination between my intention and my jaw has developed a lag, a half-second delay that turns every consonant soft and every vowel imprecise, and the cumulative effect is the auditory signature of exactly what Brandon has been telling everyone I am. Sarah leans in. Her face arranges itself into an expression I know professionally, the head tilt of compassionate engagement, the softened eyes of a practitioner addressing someone she believes cannot fully process language. "It's okay, Martha, you don't have to strain yourself," she says. She says it gently. She means it kindly. That is the part that is the hardest to sit with. She genuinely means it kindly. I try to tell her about the dress. About the empty chair and the silver spoon and the nightly ritual that has been going on for 11 weeks. About the baclofen in the tea. About the forged APS documents and the letterhead and the estate attorney who believes I am in Vermont. I try to move my jaw in the shape of these facts. What comes out sounds like a woman trying to tell someone about spiders. The frustration is a hot coal in my chest, burning without oxygen, the particular hell of a mind that is fully intact and fully imprisoned in a body that has been turned against it. I am in there. I can see out. And what I see, in Sarah's expression, is that she cannot see me. Brandon leads her to the fireplace with the considerate guidance of a docent at a museum, positioning her for the optimal view. I don't need to look. I already know what's on the hearth before my eyes find it, because I know this man's methodology, and this is the next logical step in the architecture of what he's been building. The shattered remains of my Ming-style vases lie among the fireplace tiles like a diagram of my life before this year. Arthur brought them back from a dealer in Hong Kong the year we celebrated our silver anniversary. They were not particularly valuable by market standards, a few $1,000s each, reproductions more than true antiques, but they had the particular value of a gift given by a man who had paid attention, who had noticed that I stopped in front of that type of ceramic every time we were in a gallery, who had filed that information away for 25 years and then produced it on the right morning. They are in pieces. She threw them during a bout of confusion this morning, Brandon says. His voice carries the precise calibration of grief that has been professionally managed, sad but coping, sorrowful but functional. She thought they were intruders. Sarah is writing. The pen moves across her notepad in quick, compressed strokes. I stare at the shards. I did not break them. I know I did not break them because I know where I was this morning, seated at the breakfast table while the baclofen worked, then in my room while the baclofen peaked, then at this table again, and at no point in any of those locations was I in proximity to the fireplace. He smashed my history last night, or early this morning while I was under, and arranged the debris with the thoroughness of a man who is building a forensic case. The loss of the objects is a physical ache, the kind that lives in the solar plexus. The realization of his thoroughness is worse. He is not improvising. He has a list. He is working through it systematically. Sarah leaves at 12:40. I watch her practical shoes move down the front walk from the window of the drawing room until Brandon steps between me and the glass, blocking the sight of her departure with his body. He retires to the study within minutes, already on his phone, already performing the next scene for whatever audience requires his attention. I wait. I count his footsteps. I count the sound of the study door closing. I count to 300, 5 minutes, and then I move. My legs are still heavy, baclofen thick, but functional. I use the wall for support when I need it and I don't when I don't, and I make my way down the east corridor to the small office that Arthur always called mine, where I kept my client notes and my reference books and my correspondence before Brandon revoked my email access. My desktop computer sits dark and dormant. I press the power button. Nothing. I try the keyboard. The monitor. The power strip. All dark. He has severed the machine at the source, somewhere behind the wall or beneath the floorboards, a cut in the system that is invisible from the surface. I turn to the secondary panel on the wall, the smart home interface, and I am about to try the manual override when the speakers in the crown molding, 4 of them set into the plaster at the cardinal points of the ceiling, come alive. The sound that fills the room is my own voice. Distorted. Pitch shifted slightly upward, the way fear naturally raises the voice. Layered with a background of ragged breathing. My voice, screaming words I have never said in any register, get them off me. The spiders are under my skin. They're under my... I back away from the center of the room. My shoulder finds the bookcase. I hold on to it. I know what I am hearing. I know it clinically and I know it precisely. It is a deepfake audio stitch, a composite assembled from my recorded therapy sessions, from the years of recordings I kept as clinical notes, which Brandon must have accessed when he took control of the estate's digital infrastructure. He has taken the raw material of my professional life, my voice at its most measured, its most careful, and he has reconstructed it into a portrait of psychosis. My own voice, playing on a loop in my own house, screaming about spiders. It stops after 43 seconds. The silence after it is absolute and terrible. I stand at the bookcase with my hand on the spine of my medical reference and I breathe. I breathe with the deliberate, metered cadence of a clinical intervention, 4 counts in, hold, 6 counts out, until my heart rate descends from what it has done back towards something workable. My face is a fortress. It will remain a fortress. He is dismantling me digitally now. He has already dismantled me legally. He has dismantled me pharmacologically and physically and architecturally. He is thorough. I will grant him that. He is meticulous in a way that would be almost admirable if it were directed at anything other than the erasure of a human being. But meticulousness cuts both ways. At 2:40 in the afternoon, I see my window. Brandon has gone to the garden. I track him through the south-facing breakfast room window, watching his figure move down the flagstone path toward the iron bench near the topiary where he goes to smoke. He lights a cigar with a silver lighter. His back is to the house. The smart home motion sensors cover the garden path but not the kitchen interior. There is a delay in the interior grid during daylight hours, a gap in the coverage I mapped during the 3rd week of my imprisonment when I still had clearer access to the system interface. I had been waiting for this combination of variables for 4 days. I move. The baclofen protests. My muscles register every step as an argument, a negotiation, the body writing a detailed memo about the unreasonableness of what I'm asking it to do. I ignore the memo. I use the wall when I need it and I don't when I don't, and I move through the east corridor into the kitchen. The kitchen is cool and smells of stale coffee from this morning's pot, the ground still sitting in the filter, the carafe gone dark. The granite island. The copper pots hanging on the rack above the stove. And there, mounted on the wall beside the refrigerator, the landline. Beige plastic. A corded phone, 20 years old if it's a day, the kind that doesn't require the smart home system to function because it runs on copper wire and principle. Arthur insisted on keeping it. What happens when the power goes out, Marty? What happens when the whole network crashes? I had teased him about it. I had called him a Luddite with affection. I would like to apologize to him now, wherever he is. I reached the granite island. My fingers brushed the beige plastic of the receiver. I just need to lift it. I need to dial 3 digits. I need one clear sentence before the fog takes me back under. This is Martha Walker at the Walker Estate in Greenwich. I am being held against my will. I am being drugged. Please send. One clear sentence. That's all. One sentence to break 11 weeks of silence. My hand closes around the handset. The shadow arrives before he does. It falls across the linoleum from the doorway in the shape of a man who is 6'1" and broad through the shoulders, and I know from the geometry of it that I have approximately 1 second before the rest of him arrives. I lift the receiver. I bring it to my ear. I am already pressing the first digit. His hand slams down on mine. The impact drives my knuckles into the cradle, pinning the receiver down, and the sound of the dial tone cuts off with a click that seems, in this kitchen, in this silence, as final as anything I have ever heard. He doesn't shout. He is always worse when he doesn't shout. The quiet is the thing that tells you how sure he is. You've been a very naughty girl, Mother. He takes his time. He lets the sentence sit between us in the air. His grip on my hand is not violent, it is precise, controlled, the grip of a man who has calculated exactly how much force is necessary and is applying no more and no less. I think we need to start the evening early. His fingers close around my upper arm. He steers me. I let him steer me, because resistance in this moment produces nothing useful and costs me energy I am tracking carefully. We move through the east corridor. We move into the dressing room. He opens the cedar chest. The smell that comes up from the wedding dress is cedar and something older, something like must and lavender and the ghost of gardenias, and I stand there and let him dress me in it because I have made the calculation and this is what the calculation requires. The corset strings hiss as he yanks them. 3 p.m., the light outside the dressing room window still full afternoon gold, and I am being put into an evening gown as a punishment for attempting to contact emergency services. The lace settles around my throat. Cold, in spite of everything. He comes back from the kitchen with something in his hand. The phone cord. He holds it in 2 pieces now, he grips it at either end and wrenches it apart, the copper wires inside snapping with a sound like the snapping of small, thin bones. Then he looks at me. Ghosts don't make phone calls, Martha. He holds the 2 severed ends up between us, a visual aid, a lesson. And they certainly don't have bank accounts. He drops them into the kitchen trash can. The plastic lid swings closed. I watch the lid settle. I listen to the sound of it settling. I hold myself very still in the wedding dress in the afternoon light and I let the full weight of what he has just said find its place in my mind, because it does not land as a devastation, it lands as information. They certainly don't have bank accounts. He is still thinking about the secondary ledger. He is still hung on the offshore accounts. He has the conservatorship, he has the legal architecture, but he does not have access to the accounts themselves, and the fact that he is still circling this particular subject in his asides, his throwaway cruelties, tells me that the ledger is still the pressure point. Still the thing he cannot resolve. As long as he needs the ledger, he needs me breathing. You need a timeout to remember your place. His hand is on my shoulder, steering me through the kitchen, past the counter where the severed phone cord is already in the trash, past the refrigerator, to the door at the far end of the kitchen that leads to the winter pantry. I know this room. It was a cold storage room in the original 1920s construction of the estate. Arthur showed me the plans once, laughing about the historical ingenuity of it. Windowless. Oak door 6 inches thick, originally designed for insulation, incidentally and perfectly soundproofed. A lock that was original to the house and that Brandon has apparently kept maintained. He opens the door. He guides me in. He pulls the door closed behind me. The lock clicks. The darkness is total, not the darkness of a room with the lights off, but the particular darkness of a room that has never known natural light, an absolute darkness that presses against the eyes like a physical weight. The air is stagnant and cool, smelling of dry grain and the paper of old storage boxes and the very faint, almost imperceptible metallic smell of old construction. I can hear my own heartbeat in it. I stand still for a moment, the lace bunching around my feet, the corset still squeezing the air from my lungs in thin installments. Then I sit down on the floor. I don't panic. This is a deliberate choice, not a temperamental gift. I have sat with patients in acute crisis for 40 years. I know what panic does to the cognitive processing system. I know it physiologically, the cortisol cascade, the narrowing of the attentional field, the systematic shutdown of the prefrontal cortex's executive function. Panic is a resource, and it is a resource that, once spent, is not quickly recovered. I cannot afford to spend it now. I close my eyes. It makes no perceptible difference in the dark, but the act of closing them is an act of intention, a signal to the rest of the system that we are choosing our condition rather than having it imposed on us. I breathe. 4 in. Hold. 6 out. And then, in the dark, in the corset, in the lace, I open the blueprints. I have the floor plan of this estate in my memory with the precision of a woman who has lived in it for 28 years, who has walked its corridors at 3 in the morning when a child was ill, who has measured its dimensions with the informal metrology of a body that knows a space. I lay the plans out in my mind and I begin to walk them. The winter pantry, no windows, oak door, single lock, original construction. Adjacent to the kitchen. The kitchen, the service entrance on the north wall, the delivery passage that leads to the exterior. The smart home coverage in the service corridor. I recalled the blind spot, the place near the service entrance where the ivy that grows along the north exterior wall has, over the years, grown far enough into the eaves to obscure the camera lens. Brandon doesn't know about the blind spot because he inherited this house 8 months ago and the ivy has been there for 12 years. I map the sensors. I map the delays. I map the gaps. I turn my prison into a tactical grid. Every second in the dark is a second I spend calculating his vulnerabilities, and he has given me 2 hours of uninterrupted time to do it. Time passes differently in total darkness. The body's sense of duration becomes unreliable, untethered from the visual anchors that normally structure it. I count my own pulse instead, 62 beats per minute when I am calm, which I am, which takes work to maintain, but which I maintain. I count in measured blocks and I track the time that way. Through the thin gap at the bottom of the oak door, perhaps half an inch of clearance between door and floor, I see the flicker of the kitchen lights, the kitchen fluorescence cycling, the particular quality of light that means someone has moved through the motion-sensitive kitchen circuit. Then, the clink of glass. Once. A pause. Twice. A pause. A third time. Then, and this is new, this is what I have been waiting for, the distinct rattle of a pill bottle. Not the soft, dull rattle of a cardboard pharmaceutical box, but the sharp, plasticky click of a prescription bottle, the kind with the childproof cap, the kind that requires a particular grip and downward press to open. The sound is brief and followed by silence and then the hollow tap of the bottle being set back on the counter. I know that sound with professional precision. I know the difference between the sound of one pill dispensed and several. I know the pause that follows a single pill, the brief gap while the person tips the bottle, collects the tablet, replaces the cap. I know the slightly longer pause that follows too. This was too. I file it carefully. Brandon is not just a narcissist managing the presentation of a healthy, capable person to the outside world. He is a functioning addict managing his own anxiety with a prescription he has not mentioned to me, not that he owes me his medical history, but the concealment matters. The concealment tells me he knows it represents a vulnerability. The pattern tells me more, the agitation after Sarah left, the cigar in the garden, the need to reassert control physically and spatially by putting me in a box, followed now by the chemical leveling. This is the behavioral signature of a man whose anxiety is outpacing his capacity to manage it with brandy alone. He is over-medicating his own terror. The precision he believes to be his great strength has a flaw built into it. He is running two chemical systems simultaneously, his and mine, and one of them is developing cracks. When the lock clicks and the door opens 2 hours and 11 minutes later, I know because I have been counting. The light from the kitchen feels like something physical entering the room, pressing against my dark adjusted eyes with a gentle force. I let my eyes do the appropriate thing, they water. Involuntary lacrimation from light adjustment, but to an observer it looks like the aftermath of weeping. I let my eyes stay wet. I reach out from the floor and find his hand with my trembling fingers. I touch the back of his hand, his scar, the knuckles, the heavy gold of the signet ring, with the tentative, uncertain touch of a woman who is not entirely sure where she is or what she is reaching for. "Thank you, Brandon," I whisper. The voice I produce has a crack in it, a hairline fracture running right through the middle of the syllables. It is the voice of a woman who has been broken. I know exactly how to make it, because I have heard it many times from many people, and I have always known it when I heard it. I was so confused. I didn't know where I was. I keep my eyes slightly unfocused as he helps me to my feet. I keep my weight against his arm in a way that communicates dependency. I watch his face while he is watching mine. The triumph that flares in his dark eyes is so bright and immediate that it is almost sad, almost, the way certain tragedies are almost sad when you are not inside them. He believes it. He has wanted this for weeks and it has arrived in precisely the form he imagined, and his hunger for it is so large that it has become his blind spot. He leads me back toward the dining room for the evening ritual. I walk beside him with the careful, uncertain steps of a woman who has finally accepted her circumstances, and behind my carefully unfocused eyes I am calculating the lethal dosage of his own vanity. Not yet. But soon. Hope is a dangerous chemical. I know this clinically. I have sat across from patients whose hope was the most treacherous thing in the room, the thing that made them lower their guard, reach for something too soon, expose themselves before the conditions were right. I have watched hope accelerate the deterioration of carefully constructed coping strategies. I have documented it in case notes. Patient demonstrates premature optimism inconsistent with current risk assessment. And yet, I stand at the entrance to Arthur's study in the blue-gray light of a Connecticut afternoon, and I feel it surge through me the way a stimulant enters the bloodstream, immediate, unmistakable, dangerous. My eyes are on the mahogany wainscoting on the north wall, on the built-in bookshelf with its leather spines and Arthur's collected architectural folios and the small, carved garland of oak leaves that runs along the top edge of the molding. The carving is beautiful and always has been. I have looked at it 1,000 times. But today I am looking at the third leaf cluster from the left on the lower register, at the place where the carving's edge produces a slight irregularity, a seam that is not a seam, a small, tactile bump beneath the decorative surface that does not belong to the ornamental architecture. Arthur had it installed after the Hendersons were burgled in 2009. He never told Brandon about it because Brandon was 21 and had, even then, certain qualities that made one reluctant to share information with him. Arthur told me. He showed me the manual. 3 seconds of sustained pressure, Marty. That's all it takes. Brandon has spent 4 months modernizing every digital system in this estate. He has installed smart locks and motion sensors and speaker arrays in the crown molding. He has revoked my access to every network device. He has done all of this with the meticulous, Ivy League thoroughness of a man who considers himself the most intelligent person in any room. He has not touched the analog relics. He is an elitist. To Brandon, anything without a touch screen is beneath his notice, his father's era, outmoded, beneath engagement. He didn't even register the old landline as a threat until I reached for it, and the panic button is invisible, unpowered, not connected to his network, not even technically a smart device. It is a copper wire running through a plaster wall to a relay that communicates with a security dispatch center via a phone line that predates the internet. He missed it entirely. My fingers itch. I stand in the doorway of the study and I look at the molding and I calculate the risk of moving toward it now, in this afternoon window, with Brandon in the East Wing and Dr. No. Not yet. That thought is not yet complete. I file it. I wait for the right moment the way I have been waiting for everything. The evening ritual proceeds as always. The candles. The dark lake of the mahogany table. The silver set at the head for a ghost. I take my place in the chair to the right of the empty seat and I pick up the George III spoon and I begin the performance, and Brandon is across from me with his brandy and his Audemars Piguet and his satisfaction, watching me serve soup to a dead man with the focused appreciation of a man watching his own investment mature. I watch his glass. I have been timing this for 3 weeks. The particular moment when he lifts the crystal to his lips, when both hands are occupied and his visual attention tracks upward with the glass, a fraction of a second of divided attention, the narcissist's briefest lapse in surveillance, the moment when the performance he is watching is obscured by the performance he is enacting. He raises the glass. I don't just drop the spoon. I sweep my entire arm across the table in one clean, committed arc. The bowl of lukewarm consommé catches my forearm at the rim and goes over, the full bowl, the liquid, the porcelain, directly into his lap. The effect is immediate and total. The mask doesn't slip. It detonates. Brandon comes out of his chair like a man who has been shot, the crystal glass hitting the table, the brandy splashing across the white damask, his dark eyes going incandescent with a rage that has no performance in it whatsoever. "You senile bitch," the words come out in a hiss, low and violent, a voice that would make Sarah the APS caseworker recoil into her overworked blazer and start filing reports. He grabs a linen napkin and scrubs at his cashmere trousers with the focused, furious attention of a man whose vanity has been structurally damaged. He is looking at the stain. He is thinking about the cashmere. I am already gone. The hallway receives me with its usual indifference. I move with the silent gait I have been cultivating for weeks, not hurrying, because hurrying produces sound, and sound produces information, through the east corridor, the carpets absorbing my footsteps, the motion sensors tracking my passage with their small red eyes but registering nothing they are not programmed to register. A woman walking in her own home. An ambulatory event consistent with baseline parameters. I reach the study door. I open it. I go in. My breath is coming in ragged hitches against the corset, which has not gotten any looser in the weeks I have been wearing it and which tonight seems to have acquired a new and personal ambition to separate my ribs from my sternum. I breathe through it, through the pain, through the surging biochemical noise of what I am about to do. I reach the north wall. My hand finds the bookshelf molding and I trace it, the grain of the carved oak, warm and smooth, the familiar progression of leaf clusters, to the third from the left on the lower register. My fingertip finds the seam that is not a seam. The small, hard, plastic bump beneath the decorative wood. I press it. I hold it for 3 full seconds, counting in my head with the steadiness of a clinical metronome. There is no siren. No flashing light. No audible confirmation of any kind. Only the faint, internal click of a circuit closing somewhere inside the wall, a sound so small that I might have manufactured it from hope alone. Except that I know the sound. Arthur showed me the sound. This is exactly what it is supposed to sound like. Somewhere miles away in a security dispatch center, a red light is blinking. Somewhere, a human being who does not know Brandon Walker and does not owe him anything is reading that signal and preparing a response. I lean against the bookshelf with my fists full of yellowed lace and I pray, quietly, internally, with the specific and unpracticed quality of a woman who does not pray as a habit but has arrived at a juncture where the available options have narrowed to two, for the sound of sirens over the Greenwich Hills. 10 minutes. The headlights come first, twin beams sweeping across the study walls as the vehicle turns through the iron gates, which means Brandon has already remotely released them, which means he knows someone is coming, which means the dispatch center called the estate before dispatching, which means I am already at the window. A sleek black sedan parks in the circular drive. Two men emerge. One in a security guard's uniform, hand resting on a radio. One in a clinical white coat, carrying a briefcase, moving with the unhurried authority of a man who has done this before. My heart hammers a rhythm against my compressed ribs that is difficult to ignore. I raise my hand. I press my palm against the cold glass of the study window. I wave, a trembling, visible, I am here, please see me gesture. Brandon is at the front door before I can reach the foyer. I hear his voice through the heavy oak of the hallway doors, muffled but perfectly composed, the voice of the burdened son, the grief-seasoned caretaker, the man who called ahead. Thank you for coming so quickly. A pause. She's had a violent break. She's triggered the old alarm system in her confusion. The world in my chest goes very cold and very still. He called ahead. He knew the panic button was there. He knew, or he discovered it, or he simply prepared for every analog contingency the way he prepares for everything, and he has already reframed its activation as evidence. He has turned my only call for help into another entry in the forensic case for my insanity. I push through the hallway doors into the foyer anyway. He's lying. I'm being held against I stop. The man in the white coat is turning toward me, and I know this face. I have known this face for 9 years, since the year Arthur's cardiologist recommended a colleague for a second opinion on a matter of arterial concern, since the year Brandon made his first significant donation to a private medical practice in Darien, a donation that was, I understood even then, the establishment of a relationship rather than an act of charity. Dr. Eris. He looks at me with the expression a quality control inspector gives a malfunctioning machine, not concern, not medical engagement, but the professional assessment of a problem that needs to be categorized and processed. He is perhaps 60, silver at the temples, the particular physical confidence of a man whose authority has never once been seriously challenged in a room. He does not look at me like a patient. He looks at me like a problem to be liquidated. Now, Martha. His voice is a low, oily purr, the voice of a man whose bedside manner has been engineered to function as a mild sedative. We've discussed these paranoid delusions. The baclofen clearly isn't stabilizing your hippocampal transitions. He says it with the fluency of a man who prepared the sentence in the car on the way over. He has never sat across from me in a clinical setting. We have never discussed anything. But he says it with such institutional authority, in such precise neurological vocabulary, that I can almost feel it landing on Sarah the APS caseworker's notepad as objective medical testimony. I stare at him. I stare at him with my steel-gray eyes and I let him see, for just 1 second, before I remember to perform the widow, that I know exactly what he is. What they both are. What this is. Dr. Eris opens his briefcase with the efficiency of a man billing by the hour. He produces a clipboard. He produces a heavy silver pen with the deliberate quality of a prop being introduced. The pen is part of the performance, solid and substantial, the visual signifier of institutional authority in a doctor's hand. He clicks it once. I'm signing the Section 12, Brandon. She's a danger to herself and clearly lacks the capacity for self-care. He slides the paper across the console table without looking at me again. The scratch of his signature, 3 seconds, a loop and a slash and an illegible flourish, is the sound of a door closing. I understand what a Section 12 means. I have filed them myself, in the course of a 30-year clinical career, when the filing was warranted. It initiates an involuntary psychiatric hold. It moves a person from the category of citizen into the category of ward, strips them of the presumption of competency, and opens the door to commitment proceedings that can, if managed by the right attorney with the right conservatorship documentation already in place, become indefinite. By tomorrow morning, I will be in a facility Brandon controls, sedated beyond the ability to communicate anything that will be received as testimony, and the trust transfer will proceed from there as a formality. Brandon looks at me from across the foyer. The sadistic triumph in his dark eyes is the purest, most undisguised expression I have ever seen on his face. He is not performing for anyone in this moment. This is him, simply him, lit up from the inside by the pleasure of winning something he has been engineering for months. He has won. Except. Let's discuss the transport logistics in the kitchen, Brandon says, with the managing ease of a man who has the next 12 hours scheduled to the minute. He places a hand between Dr. Eris's shoulder blades, a guiding gesture, collegial, the gesture of a host, and steers him toward the back of the house. I have a particular sedative regime I'd like to maintain. Their voices diminish. The kitchen door swings closed behind them. I stand in the foyer in my wedding dress, and I count to 15, and then I slip back into the study. The letter opener on the desk catches the light from the hallway, long and silver, a Victorian piece that Arthur used to open his mail with the ritual attention he gave to all analog objects. It sits in a green marble holder beside the blotter. I pick it up. I hold it. It has a good weight. Then I look at the desk itself, the massive antique burl wood that has dominated this room since the 1950s, which Brandon has been using as his operational center since he took effective control of the estate. He sits here for hours. I have watched the light under the study door, tracked his presence by it. I know he keeps things in this desk that he has not shown anyone. His projects. I know he has a journal. I have been inferring the journal from behavioral evidence for weeks, the meticulous recording quality of his cruelties, the fact that he documents rather than simply acts, the metallic smell I detected near the dining room sideboard that turned out, upon clinical reflection, to be the particular scent of fountain pen ink on fine paper. A narcissist who records his work. A man who needs evidence of his own brilliance. I look at the central drawer. There is a lock. A small, brass lock, residential quality, the kind installed by craftsmen in 1952 who were not anticipating the specific security needs of a patricide. I wedge the silver letter opener into the gap at the top edge of the drawer, angling it against the lock mechanism. I lean my weight into it, all of my weight, what there is of it, 135 pounds of retired clinical therapist in a Victorian corset, and I lever downward. The wood groans. A deep, structural protest, the sound of a 100-year-old joint being asked to do something it was never designed to do. Then, pop. The bolt gives way with a clean, quiet snap. The drawer slides open. I look at the contents with the systematic attention I was trained to bring to evidence. Bank statements, top layer, forged or heavily altered, the numbers too round, the font slightly inconsistent. Correspondence with someone in Bridgeport whose name I don't recognize. A photograph of Arthur that I did not know Brandon had, Arthur perhaps 60, taken in the garden, squinting into the sun. And beneath all of it, at the bottom of the drawer, a small black leather-bound journal. I pick it up. The leather is soft with handling. It smells of his pomade, that particular synthetic note I have been inhaling for months, and underneath it, something metallic and faintly clinical. I open it. The handwriting is his. I know his handwriting from years of birthday cards and signed documents. This is meticulous, compressed, the handwriting of a man who writes small because he is writing things he does not want seen, every letter formed precisely, every line ruled with apparent care against the cream-colored pages. He has recorded everything. I understand this in the abstract before I understand it in the particular. He has recorded everything as a category, before the specific entries resolve into meaning. Then they do. Dates. Dosages. Observations. Subject demonstrating expected cognitive disruption following second week of administration. Sleep patterns consistent with moderate hippocampal interference. Recommend maintaining current regime for minimum 6 weeks before escalating. Subject is me. This is my medical chart, maintained by the man who has been dosing me. My body, described in the third person, observed with clinical interest. I flip back. I flip back past the weeks of my imprisonment, past the beginning of the conservatorship proceedings, past the month of Arthur's death, and I find the entries that precede it. The entries from the months before Arthur died. My breath catches. Not a gasp, I do not gasp, I have disciplined that response out of my physical repertoire through decades of clinical training. But my diaphragm does something involuntary, a sharp contraction against the corset, and the air in my lungs becomes briefly insufficient, and I have to consciously re-engage the breathing apparatus before I can continue reading. He was practicing. The journal entries from 8 months before Arthur's death are not personal observations. They are clinical notes. A research log. He was prototyping, his word, here on this page, in his meticulous compressed hand, the symptoms of a stroke event. Anticoagulant combination producing expected hemiplegic response in subject at reduced dosage. Refining delivery mechanism. Arthur was the subject. My husband, who trusted his son with his medications, who allowed Brandon to manage his pill organizer because Brandon had insisted on being helpful, who would accept a glass of water and a capsule from his son's hand without reading the label because that is the nature of trust. Arthur was the subject of a clinical trial conducted by his own child. I find the specific entry. I know I will find it because the journal is chronological and I am moving toward a date I have been carrying in my chest since the morning the paramedics came. June 14th, administered 40 mg dose. Subject showed expected hemiplegic response. Vital signs mimicked ischemic event perfectly. The accident in the shower was the final touch. I read the sentence 3 times. Not because I need to. I understand it completely on the first reading. I read it 3 times because I am a clinical professional who learned early in her career that the most important documents require that you read them more than once, not for comprehension, but for the integration of what you now know into the architecture of what you thought you knew. It wasn't a hard event. It wasn't a tragedy of the body's entropy. It was a surgical execution, planned in this journal, administered in the bathroom of this house, completed in the shower where Arthur fell and did not get up, and covered by the sympathetic credibility of a handsome grieving son in a cashmere sweater. The grief I have been carrying for 8 months is still there. It does not go away. But it is joined now by something else, something cold and bright and clarifying, like a steel instrument laid against skin. The grief was warm and private and paralyzing. This new thing is neither. This new thing is precision. I turn to the final entry. The handwriting is from yesterday, the ink still carrying the slight sheen of recent application. The Mother Project, final phase. The wedding dress ritual has successfully induced the desired level of psychological fragmentation. Tonight's commitment is the final lullaby. Once she's in the facility, the trust transfer becomes a formality. She will be gone by autumn. I read it once. I am his next project. I am a line item. I am a phase, a final phase, with a timeline and an outcome and a methodology, and he has named it after me with the possessive confidence of a man who considers the naming of his projects a form of wit. I am the mother. This is the project. It has a lullaby. I think of Arthur in the shower. I think of the specific clinical precision required to engineer a stroke in a healthy man and make it look like an accident. I think of the months of practice, the dosages, the refinements, the optimization of delivery. I think of my husband trusting his son. The journal does not break me. I am past the place where things break me. I have been past it for some time, but I know that now with a certainty that is itself a kind of architecture, a load-bearing wall. It doesn't break me. It hardens me into something with an edge. I am not a mother anymore, not in this room, not tonight. I am a witness. I am the only living person who knows what happened to Arthur Walker on the 14th of June, and the only person who is positioned to do anything about it. The footsteps in the hallway are unmistakable. Heavy, arrogant, the footfall of a man who has been walking through this house as if it already belongs entirely to him for months now. I recognize his pace. I have been mapping it since the first week, the exact interval between steps, the way the heel strikes harder than the toe, and I know from the rhythm that he is walking with purpose rather than searching, which means he is returning to the study because the logistics with Dr. Eris are concluded, which means the clock on tonight's proceedings has been set. I have perhaps 4 seconds. The journal is a small book. It fits into the hidden interior pocket of my silk slip, the pocket Arthur had his tailor add at my request 20 years ago because I disliked carrying a handbag at formal dinners, the pocket that exists below the lace and above the petticoat, invisible to anyone who is not looking for it. I slide the journal in. I feel its weight against my left hip, small and contained and devastating. I move to the armchair, Arthur's armchair, the oxblood leather one in the corner, and I sit. I arrange the lace. I smooth my skirts with methodical, precise hands. I let my shoulders drop. I let my head tilt. I let my face go to the particular blankness I have been cultivating, the vacant, shattered compliance of a woman who has been processed by the machinery of her son's plan and has nothing left to resist with. My right hand rests in my lap. I let it tremble, just enough, the fine, baclofen-calibrated tremor, against the fabric. Brandon enters the room. I do not look up. He stands in the doorway for a moment. I feel him there, assessing, checking the tableau against his expectations, the way a director steps back to look at a scene and verify that everything is in its proper position. He makes a small sound of satisfaction. The sound of a man who has arrived at the conclusion of something and finds it orderly. Behind my lowered eyelashes, my steel-gray eyes are open, alert, watching the floor in front of his feet, reading his posture from the shadow he casts. He is relaxed. He is confident. He is an inch taller than usual in the way that men grow when they believe they have won. Inside the hidden pocket of my silk slip, against my left hip, his own journal is resting. Inside my mind, I am already at the next phase of the calculation, the brandy, the pill bottle I heard from behind the pantry door, his documented dosage methodology, his lullaby. I know his routine. I know his drugs. I have 40 years of clinical pharmacology and a mind that has had 11 weeks of enforced stillness in which to think without interruption. I know what his last lullaby needs to be. Not yet. Tonight he believes he has won, and that belief is the most valuable asset I have, and I will spend it with the same care with which I have spent everything else. I will let him keep it for a little while longer. But the cocktail is already mixing, quiet and cold and precise, in the part of my mind where I keep the things that matter. I stop fighting the corset. This is not defeat. I want to be precise about that, here in the interior architecture of my own mind where precision still matters and where no one else's interpretation can reach. I stop fighting the corset the way a surgeon stops fighting the incision, because the cut has been made, because the work requires stillness now, because the next phase of the procedure demands a different quality of attention than the last. I smooth the yellowed skirts of the wedding dress with both hands, a slow and rhythmic motion, back and forth across the heavy lace. The texture of it no longer registers as dead skin against my palms. It registers as what it is, a prop. A piece of theater that I am, as of tonight, directing. Brandon paces. He has been pacing for 20 minutes, his leather loafers striking the hardwood with that heavy, arrogant cadence I have memorized down to the interval between steps. His energy tonight is different, higher, more kinetic, the particular manic quality of a man who has been anticipating something for a long time and has arrived, at last, at the eve of its completion. The commitment papers from Dr. Eris sit on the sideboard in a manila folder, and Brandon looks at them every third circuit of the room the way a man looks at a winning ticket. His shark smile is the widest I have ever seen it. It has moved past performance into genuine expression. He is not smiling at me, he is smiling because he cannot stop, because the pleasure of this moment is exceeding even his capacity for studied elegance and spilling over into something nakedly, revealingly real. He thinks he has broken my spirit. He has broken my spirit the way a river breaks against a dam. He has redirected nothing. He has only forced me underground, into the cold quiet basement of my mind where I have been working, patient and unhurried, with tools he does not know I possess. I smooth the skirts. I let my eyes go soft. I let him pace. One last toast to the old life, mother. He says it with the theatrical generosity of a man who believes he is being magnanimous in victory, a conquering general gesturing at the spoils before they are catalogued and carried off. He moves to the sideboard where the Waterford decanter sits in the firelight, the amber brandy catching the glow and holding it, beautiful and deceptive the way beautiful deceptive things always are. He pours a double measure. The scent of it fills the room, oak and peat and the particular sweetness of a single malt that costs more than most people's car payments, and he lifts the glass to the light for a moment, admiring it, before he sets it on the edge of the mahogany table. Then he turns to the fireplace to stoke the embers. His back is toward me. Broad and cashmere covered and completely, magnificently unguarded, the back of a man who has never, not once in his adult life, genuinely feared the person standing behind him. Why would he? I am 65 years old and I weigh 135 pounds and I have been wearing a Victorian corset and performing senility for 11 weeks and he has a Section 12 on the sideboard and a transport team 40 minutes out. He cannot imagine what I am. I reach into the hidden pocket of my silk slip. The vial is there, small, glass, warm from being against my skin since this afternoon, since the hours I spent in chemical inventory while he was occupied elsewhere in the house. I prepared it yesterday, during the window between his cigar and his evening phone call, in the kitchen where I had been observing his pharmaceutical routine for 3 weeks. His own prescription, the anxiety medication he rattles from the childproof bottle in the evenings, the drug whose dosage has been climbing in correlation with the pressure of his timeline. Combined with the specific pharmaceutical markers he documented in his own hand, in his own journal, in the entries I have now read 17 times and committed to memory, the anticoagulant interaction profile, the hemiplegic response curve, the dosage that produces the vascular event he described with such clinical satisfaction as mimicking an ischemic event perfectly. He wrote the formula himself. He refined it on Arthur. He published it, in his private way, in the pages of that leather-bound journal. I am simply applying his own research. In one fluid motion, steadier than anything I have produced in 11 weeks, the tremors gone as if they were always a performance, replaced by the surgical focus that has been waiting beneath them, I tip the vial into his glass. The liquid vanishes into the brandy. No color. No sediment. No trace. I step back into the shadows of the dining room. I return my hands to my skirts. I resume the smoothing motion, back and forth, back and forth. He turns from the fireplace. The dancing light catches his dark eyes. He reaches for the glass. To your health, Brandon. The silence that follows is a specific kind of silence, the silence of a man whose entire model of his environment has just produced an unexpected output. He stops. The glass is halfway to his lips and his eyes are on me and there is, for the first time in 11 weeks, a question in them. He was not expecting my voice to sound like this. He was expecting the wet, drunken mumble, the baclofen slur, the cooperative incoherence of a woman who has accepted her packaging. My voice is a razor-sharp clinical observation, and he can hear the difference, and it is briefly, magnificently confusing to him. I read the journal, I continue. I hold his gaze with my steel-gray eyes, directly, steadily, the way I used to hold the gaze of patience in acute crisis, without flinching, without looking away. I know about the 40 milligram dose. I know how you watched Arthur's vitals mimic an ischemic event. I pause for exactly 1 beat. You were so proud of the accident in the shower. His face moves through a sequence of expressions in rapid succession: surprise, recalibration, a flash of something that might, in a different organism, be fear, and then his architecture reasserts itself. The sneer forms slowly, with the deliberate quality of a man putting on his armor. His chin comes up. His shoulders settle. His arrogance wins. It always does. This is the quality I have been counting on, the core structural vulnerability in the entire edifice of Brandon Walker, his absolute, bedrock certainty that he is the most intelligent person in any room, that his plans are airtight, that nothing a drugged, senile widow could have found or understood or prepared could constitute a genuine threat. He has spent 11 weeks confirming this belief. He has the commitment papers on the sideboard. He has Dr. Eris. He has the $2.5 million trust and the legal architecture and the smart home system and the transport team 40 minutes out. It doesn't matter what you know, Martha. His voice is pure triumph. No one listens to a ghost. He takes a long, triumphant swallow of the brandy. He drinks it with the satisfaction of a man draining a victory cup. The mocking laugh begins to form. I watch it happen, watch the throat move, watch the chest prepare to expand, watch his face arrange itself into the loud, performative contempt he uses when he wants to make a point land, and then I watch it stop. Not stop gradually. Stop. His pupils dilate, both of them simultaneously, a sudden, symmetrical expansion that I observe with the focused attention of a clinician who has been waiting to observe it. His head tilts perhaps 3 degrees to the right, an involuntary vestibular response, the body beginning to lose its confident relationship with the vertical. He tries to speak. His vocal cords do not cooperate. The baclofen component of the cocktail has found the relevant receptor sites with the reliability of a key in a prepared lock, and the result is a silence where his words were going to be, a silence that comes from inside him, that he cannot break, that is experienced from the inside as the sensation of a voice trapped behind a closing door. His hand twitches. The crystal glass slips from his fingers and falls. It seems to fall in a strange, suspended register, the way things fall when you are watching them with complete attention, and shatters on the hearth in a bright, brief explosion of Waterford and brandy and firelight. The sound it makes is clean and final. He tries to stand. His legs decline. He has been on his feet for the past 20 minutes, pacing, energized, manic with victory, and now his legs are informing him that they are no longer accepting instructions, that the neurological chain of command has been interrupted at a level below his authority. He has the sensation, I know, because he documented his father's sensation in his journal, because he observed it and recorded it and found it interesting, of leaden pillars replacing his limbs. Of a body that has been chemically instructed to stop cooperating. He is experiencing, in his own system, the exact betrayal he engineered for Arthur. His face registers this. His dark, predatory eyes, still fully functional, still cognitively intact, because this is important, because I need him present for what comes next, show me, for the first time, something I have not seen in them before. Terror. He is slumping. The body's relationship with the vertical is deteriorating, and without intervention he will find the floor. I move. My wiry strength, the wiry strength I have maintained through discipline and decades and the specific, non-negotiable stubbornness of a woman who has refused to become what her son needs her to be, comes into its own purpose. I get my hands under his arms. He is 6'1" and 185 pounds, and the drug has rendered him as collaborative as a very heavy sandbag, but I have physics and leverage and the particular focus of a woman for whom this moment has been the organizing principle of the last several weeks. I guide his collapsing frame into the heavy, velvet-backed chair at the head of the table. Arthur's chair. I settle him into it with the precision of a woman placing something in its proper location. His head lolls. His hands rest on the armrests, heavy and still. I reach up and remove the silk tie from his neck. He is always so meticulously dressed, even tonight, even in his moment of triumph. The Windsor knot still precise, and I use it to bind his wrists to the armrests. Hidden beneath the table's edge. Not violent. Not theatrical. Functional. He is sitting exactly where he has been making me sit for 11 weeks. He is serving the ghost. I lean down until my face is close to his, close enough to smell the brandy and the pomade and the faint chemical undertone of his own prescription working through his system. I look into his wide, frantically darting eyes, the only part of him he can still move, the only instrument of expression still available to him, and I speak quietly. Everything has its proper place, Brandon. His eyes track my face. They are doing the thing that eyes do when the body they belong to has been stripped of every other means of communication. They are working at maximum intensity, trying to convey with expression alone what the voice and the limbs and the architecture of the body can no longer carry. There is rage in them. There is disbelief. There is the specific, desperate quality of a narcissist who has encountered, perhaps for the first time, a situation that has not bent to his management. I lean in close, echoing the exact register, the exact proximity, the exact quality of whisper he used every time he wanted to make something land in my chest like a blade. Ghosts don't make phone calls, Brandon. I watch his pupils. I watch the recognition arrive. And they certainly don't inherit fortunes. His own words. His own methodology. His own formula applied to him with clinical precision by the woman he decided was a ghost. I watch the recognition move through him, watch it find the specific entries it matches, watch it locate the memories of the moments when he said these things to me, watch him understand, in the comprehensive and unavoidable way that only the absolutely powerless can understand, what has been done and what it means and who did it. He is experiencing the sundowning he described to Sarah, the APS caseworker. He is becoming the episode he invented to bury me. He is the confused, incapacitated patient in the chair, and I am the competent person standing over him, and the symmetry of it is precise and cold and satisfying in the way that justice is satisfying when it arrives in exactly the shape it was owed. I reach up and adjust the hidden security camera in the corner of the dining room, the one Brandon installed to capture my episodes, to document my deterioration, to produce footage that could be submitted as evidence in his conservatorship proceedings. I tilt the lens with 2 fingers, a small, careful adjustment, ensuring the angle captures his slumped form in the chair, his bound wrists, the shattered glass on the hearth. The footage of the last 10 minutes is already gone. I deleted it from the system during the afternoon, using the interface access I had been quietly reconstructing since I identified the blind spot near the service entrance. What remains, what the camera will record from this point forward, is a scene of domestic emergency. A doting mother, clearly distressed, moving through the frame in her silk loungewear. A son slumped in a chair, the apparent victim of a sudden catastrophic event. The shattered glass consistent with the involuntary movements of a stroke episode. I move to the kitchen. The landline is there, reconnected. I repaired it myself this afternoon, during the window when Brandon was occupied with Dr. Eris in the back study, a simple splice of the copper wires he tore apart, re-insulated with electrical tape from the utility drawer. 20-year-old corded telephone technology. Analog. Beneath his notice. Back in service. I lift the receiver. I breathe for one measured moment. I locate, precisely, the performance that this moment requires, not the flat, drugged compliance of the senile widow, but the ragged, hyperventilating terror of a wife who is a mother who has just found her son collapsed on the dining room floor. I know this performance. I have sat across from people living it. I know every note. I dial 911. I return to the dining room. I check his pulse, the wrist, 2 fingers, the radial artery. Thready and irregular, the rhythm of a cardiac system under significant pharmaceutical stress. I check his pupils one final time, assessing the current stage of the event against my calculations. Then I administer the final measure of the cocktail. A single drop, placed onto his tongue with the clinical precision of a woman who has spent 4 decades understanding exact dosages and their consequences. The chemical signature this will leave in his blood is consistent with the documentation in his own journal, his own recorded methodology, his own formulations, the pharmaceutical fingerprint of his own research, turned back on itself. What the toxicology will show, if anyone looks, and someone will look, because that is how these things proceed, and I am counting on it, is a pattern consistent with the kind of stress-induced vascular event that presents in high-functioning individuals under extreme psychological and pharmacological pressure. The kind of event that can occur in a man who has been self-medicating anxiety with a prescription he has been escalating for weeks. The kind of event whose documentation, if his private journal is ever examined by the right forensic specialist, will reveal a man who understood exactly this mechanism from the inside. I look at him one last time. Not as a mother. I am precise about this in my own mind, in the interior architecture where precision still matters. I am not looking at him as a mother looks at a child, with the biological voltage of that connection, with the grief and the love and the failure that lives in that specific current. I excised that. I excised it the night I read the entry dated June 14th, and what remains in its place is colder and more functional and, in this moment, necessary. I am looking at him as a judge looks at a verdict that has been reached through proper process, with full consideration of the available evidence, and found to be correct. The mother project is closed. 3 minutes. I can hear the sirens in the distance, the transport team Brandon summoned, the one meant to carry me to the facility he controls, arriving now to find a situation he did not schedule. They are perhaps 2 miles out, coming down the winding Greenwich Road, their lights making the tree line pulse in the dark. I unlace the corset. I do it standing in the dining room, in front of the fireplace, with the methodical attention I give to all tasks that have been waiting a long time to be completed. String by string, the pressure releases, the specific, individual sensation of each rib cage expanding outward into the space it has been denied, the respiratory system reclaiming its full architecture, the breath deepening in stages until it reaches the bottom of the lungs for the first time in 11 weeks. I step out of it. The yellowed wedding dress pools around my feet. I step out of that too, out of the lace, out of the dead skin, out of the friction burns and the cedar and the gardenias and the nightly ritual of serving soup to a ghost. I step out of the entire construction and I stand for a moment in the firelight in my silk slip, breathing with my whole chest, and I feel the air in my lungs as my own. I pick up the wedding dress. I hold it for one moment, not with sentiment. I am past the place where this object has sentiment, but with the attentiveness of someone completing a gesture properly, and I throw it into the fireplace. The silk catches first. Then the petticoats. The lace is last. It burns differently than the rest, darkening before it flames, the intricate pattern holding its structure for a moment in the heat before it curls and collapses into something gray and fine and weightless. The delicate gray ash rises up the chimney and vanishes into the cold Connecticut night. The masquerade is over. By the time the front door opens, I am on the floor beside Brandon's chair. My silk loungewear is rumpled. I attended to that, a specific and considered dishevelment, the kind that reads as the aftermath of desperate kneeling, of frantic checking of pulses and calling of names. My hair is loose from its bun, falling around my face, which is doing the thing that faces do in the presence of shock and grief, the redness around the eyes, the bitten lip, the particular undone quality of a woman who has not had time to compose herself because she has only just found her son. He just collapsed. The sob is real in its architecture. I have been inside genuine grief for 8 months and I know its physical signature from the inside, and I reproduce it now with the fidelity of someone who understands the source material. I point to the shattered glass on the hearth. My hand is shaking, not the baclofen tremor, which has no reason to be present anymore, but the specific trembling of a woman in acute distress. The paramedics move past me toward Brandon with the focused urgency of professionals. Dr. Eris arrives 4 minutes later. He comes through the front door with the confidence of a man who expects to be in control of whatever situation he finds, and he is not in control of this situation, and he knows at the moment he reads the room. The paramedics, the oxygen equipment, Brandon's frame on the gurney, the shattered glass. He goes pale in the specific, physiological way of a man whose calculation has just collapsed. He looks at me. I am on the floor, and I look up at him, and I let my eyes carry, beneath the grief performance, beneath the dishevelment, at a depth he has to know how to look for, a single piece of information. A data point. The microscopic nod is barely a nod at all, it is a tilt of the head that communicates, to a man watching for it, a complete and coherent sentence. The journal exists. I have it. If you speak, I will use it. If you stay silent, we have no further business. He reads it. I know he reads it because his jaw tightens once and then releases, and he looks away from me and toward his patient on the gurney, and he becomes, for the remainder of the evening, a physician managing a medical emergency with the focused professional attention of a man who has decided that whatever he knows, he does not currently know it. The Atlantic in late October is the color of my eyes. I stand on the teak deck of the ship in the early morning, before the other passengers have come out, before the deck stewards have arranged the lounge chairs for the day, in the clean salt wind that has been, for the past 6 days, methodically removing things from my skin and hair and the deep cellular memory of my body that I am willing to be done with. The scent of brandy. The scent of cedar and old lace. The particular suffocation of 11 weeks in a Victorian corset. The smell of a house that was converted, room by room, into a demonstration of what one human being can do to another when the institutional protections fail. Gone. Or going. Wind is patient and the Atlantic is large. The $2.5 million trust is under my sole control. The conservatorship, built on forged APS documents, a bought physician, and a mountain of carefully manufactured evidence of my incompetence, collapsed with a velocity that suggested it had always been structurally fragile, which it had, because the entire thing was contingent on my continued unavailability as a witness, and I am comprehensively available. Sterling and Associates have been busy. The estate attorney, who had been told I was in Vermont, had things to say about that when I called him from the landline the morning after the paramedics came. He had things to say for approximately 4 hours. The investigation that followed has its own momentum now, moving through channels that do not require my daily management. Brandon is in a state-run facility in Hartford. He is alive. I want to be precise about that, as I am precise about all things. He is alive and he will remain alive, in the particular way that a person remains alive when the higher cortical functions are present enough to register experience but the motor and speech systems are no longer available for use. He can see. He can hear. He can, by all clinical indicators, think. He is a silent observer of a world he can no longer touch, a mind housed in a body that will not take his instructions, a man who spent months making someone a ghost in their own life and has arrived at a condition that is the precise structural equivalent. He has visitors from the state facility staff. He does not have visitors from me. I look at the horizon. The steel gray of the Atlantic matches my eyes exactly, and I have always found that correspondence pleasing, and I allow myself to find it pleasing now without the clinical qualification, without the INTJ discipline of treating pleasure as a suspect indulgence. The ocean is very large. The salt wind is doing its work. The air in my lungs is mine, entirely, completely, structurally mine, and it has been mine for 6 days now and it will be mine for every day that follows, and the sensation of breathing without the boning of a corset restricting the expansion, without the weight of performed incapacity limiting the depth, is one that I intend to continue attending to with full awareness for as long as I have lungs with which to do it. Everything has its proper place. My husband is in the ground, and I carry that. I will carry it the way you carry the things that don't lift, steadily, with both hands, without pretending it's lighter than it is. But I carry it standing up. I carry it on a ship's deck in the salt wind with the whole of my chest available to me, and the horizon ahead, and the trust in order, and the journal in the hands of the investigators who know what to do with it. I am not a mother in this moment. I am not a widow, or a ward, or a ghost in yellowed lace. I am Martha Walker. The air is mine. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?